Hello everyone, my name is MrNJersey and welcome to my channel. Now I've seen a lot of comments recently, especially with 1.0 coming out, a lot of people getting more interested in picking up the game, is what settings do you play with and what are my PC specs? So I thought we'd go through it in this video, a little bit of a short video just to cover it, and there's been a lot of questions. So let's just start off with my PC specs. I'll try and put them up on screen here so you can see. So I obviously do a lot of recording, so I do a lot of game capture, and I actually use OBS to capture most of my gaming and also my voice in most instances. Now, the monitor that I'm running on is actually a 2K monitor. It's an Acer Predator 2K 144 Hertz. I think it goes up to 165 Hertz. So quite demanding to obviously push out high frame rates and good settings out on that monitor. Now my PC itself is quite good in comparison to other computers I've seen. My computer runs a Ryzen processor. Obviously I used to run actually Intel. I decided to make the jump over to Ryzen just because I got a little bit more cores, and obviously with rendering videos out it really helped me out. Now I run a 3700X, which is a 8-core 16 thread processor. I run it usually around 4.2 to 4.4 gigahertz. It is water cooled, so it stays nice and cool underneath very high loads. And funny enough, Stormworks does use a lot of CPU usage, and you'll find that, but it mainly uses 1 or 2 or 3 cores. It doesn't take full advantage of all 8 cores, unfortunately. You'll find that with gaming, it usually only takes 1 or 2 cores, and you'll see 1 core is going to get hit the most. And that's just how Stormworks works. So if you are looking at obviously getting a new computer or a new CPU, for example, try to obviously get at least 4 cores, 6 or 8 even better, but the higher the frequency that you can get out on your CPU is the better. So for example, before I had my Ryzen computer, I had an Intel, I think a 4670K, which is a 4-core 8-thread, but I used to run that I think at 4.6 or 5 gigahertz, and I actually used to get better gaming performance than what I'm getting at the moment with my 3700X. That's just because the frequency was running so high in comparison to the Ryzen, which is running at a 4.2 to 4.4, depending on certain situations and what overclocking I do on it. In terms of motherboard, I'm just running a Tomahawk, I think it's MSI Tomahawk Max B450 motherboard. Pretty entry level, does what it needs to do, has everything I need, so I'm not going to spend any more money on that. Memory wise, I have 16 gigs of DDR4 3200 megahertz Corsair RAM. It runs perfectly fine. You won't find that much of an FPS increasement by going up to 3600 or 400 megahertz speed, and you won't really see much if you upgrade up to 32 gigs. 16 gigs is enough for me, even with video editing and also playing games and recording and OBS and everything else that I run in the background. It's more than enough memory for myself. I might upgrade that in time soon, but that purposely only be for recording and for editing purposes, and not for actual gameplay here in Stormworks. The other main important thing in the computer is obviously the graphics. Now, my graphics card isn't the greatest. I know that. It's a little bit old. It's about 5 years old. I have a GTX 980 superclocked edition, which is quite old, fair enough. Obviously, when I bought it back in 2015, it was the best of the best. Unfortunately, it is a little bit limited at the moment with only 4 gigs of VRAM. I am looking at getting a new graphics card. However, I'm waiting for the new 3000 series or the new AMD cards, the Navis, to come out soon. Hopefully we'll be getting that in the next few weeks / months, and I'm looking to pick up a little bit beefier of a graphics card. But until then, I'm just holding tight, and the 980 has done me really well, and it still does really well. I still get excellent FPS in games. It does struggle a little bit here and there, especially with the larger creations, but it does really well. Besides that, that's pretty much about it for my PC setup in terms of the actual specs. Hopefully you'll be able to see everything on screen that I put on there. And if you do want to pick up any of these things that I have for my PC, I will list them in the video description below, so you can go check them out. And also if you want to pick it up, you can. But in terms of actually what settings do I run Stormworks and how do I get this kind of performance that I get, I've seen a lot of questions from you guys. So what are you doing? Well, now you know what my PC specs are. Let's have a look at the settings that I run here in game. Now, in game, you can see exactly what I have up on screen now. Just a quick disclaimer, you can copy these settings exactly as you want to. I'm not going to say that you're going to get exactly the same FPS as me. It will obviously depend on your own system settings, and also it's going to depend on what creations you're going to be using here in game. We know that obviously any creations, obviously the larger they are and the more bodies they have to them, the more complex they are and the more it slows down the game. But we'll have a look through some of these settings and see how they can affect your game. But let's just have a look at the ones that I have at the moment, and then we'll actually jump into the game itself and we'll start playing around with them, and you'll see the difference that we get when we start changing some of those settings and how many frames we drop, how many frames we gain, and so on and so forth. But the first thing you can see is I play full screen. I always play full screen mode. The reason I do that is just because my monitor obviously has G-Sync. It runs at 144 Hertz, and I usually run only the G-Sync and the overhertz, the 144 Hertz on full screen applications. I don't run it on anything else. That's just one reason why I run full screen only. Resolution is 2K. I like 2K. I've been gaming at 2K for pretty much about 5 years now, and I've been obviously desktop usage at 2K, and I can't go back to 1080p. I've tried, it just doesn't work for me. VSync I disable, and view distance I crank all the way up. I just like it all the way up, but that's your own settings. Motion blur is disabled, bloom is enabled, shadow quality medium, resolution medium, light volume medium, SSAO disabled, wildlife disabled, vehicle foam enabled, ocean foam enabled, ocean reflections enabled, ocean plants disabled, true quality medium, monitor quality high, and then field of view is all normal. So let's jump into the game and we'll have a look at some of those settings in a little bit more detail. So I'm just going to load up a brand new game. So actually I'm just going to go and load up let's go to the Creative Island. And you'll see some of those save games that actually have most of the areas in Stormworks, especially for when I'm doing recording and things. I'll just load up, I have like one save at the Creative, one save at the oil rig, one save at the North. It just helps me get to different areas quicker instead of actually getting a map and then spawning. And you can see like if you're on a newer map, you actually don't have anything unlocked, so you can't fast travel. So I just have those saves. Now, straight in game, you can see how nice and smooth it runs here. It really does help, obviously having a high refresh screen and also having the pixels and the performance to push those pixels. Now, we can actually enable the in-game FPS counter and the stats by just pressing F1 on our keyboard, and hopefully most of you can see that. But I'm getting around 126 FPS right now. Playing the game, it's perfectly buttery smooth. Obviously we don't have anything spawned in. We are at the Creative Island, which is a little bit taxing. Obviously it's got a lot of stuff on it, including workbenches and fuel tanks and all these other kinds of things. This actually does take a little bit of performance. So what we usually do is with your really large ships, we'll try and spawn them out at the oil rig base. That just helps with your FPS. But let's go and choose a ship. I'm actually going to just close that off, and I'm going to go and load up a large ship with a lot of bodies to it, something that would usually lag your computer out. So we're going to go and load up the Odin. I just checked this out in the top 5, so if you want to go and check it out, definitely go watch that video. Now this is a very taxing creation. It's got a sub on it, it's got multiple bodies, it's got cranes, it's got systems, it's got lure, it's got everything in it. So it's obviously quite a taxing creation. Now you can see my FPS has already gone and dropped down to about 90 FPS. Okay, so it's, for me, 90 FPS is fine. Obviously you need to take into factor the physics FPS and the ocean FPS and the logic FPS. You can all see that on the right hand side. That's running around 34-35 FPS. So that's why you're getting this little bit of a slowdown. Yeah, the game is still running in 83 or 90 FPS, but the actual creation and everything else inside is running a much slower FPS. Okay, so that's something you need to keep in mind too. But just by having a look here, we're going to start playing with some of the settings and we'll see how that affects everything. So the first thing, I'm just going to stand here because that way we get to see obviously pretty much everything and we get to see the whole creation. I'm just going to go and freeze the time here so we can keep a consistency on the shadows and everything else here. So going into the settings, you will notice that I can go straight over to the motion blur. Motion blur I really don't like. I find it very not nice at all, especially for recording reasons. I don't like it. I have it off. You can see FPS wise, we're sitting, what, 64, 69, 70. Let's go and disable it and let's see what we get. So go and save that. And we've gone all the way back, well, 82, 80. So we've gone up quite a bit just by disabling the motion blur. Let's see what else we have. We have bloom. Now, bloom is something that doesn't really give you any FPS. It gives you a little bit. You can see here we've gone up, what, 5, 6, 10 FPS. I like bloom, personally, especially when you have lights on. It gives that really nice, like, warm glow around it. And like sprays the light out. I really like it. I leave it on personally. It does take a little bit of your FPS, but once again, that's up to you if you want to have that enabled. We then move on to like your shadow quality and resolution. This is something that I'm going to go and disable the shadow quality, and you'll notice here that we actually don't have any shadows on anything. So there's absolutely 0 shadows on any of the creations. Now we're still around 80, 95 FPS here, and you can see no shadows. We can obviously go and enable that. Let's put it on low. How about that? And you can see we've now got some shadows here, and you can see the shadows, but it's a very low resolution here. And we're around about 84, 86 FPS. Let's go and push that up to ultra, which I usually sometimes have it on. And you can see here we've dropped about, not much, probably about 5 to 6 FPS, and you can see the difference in the shadow quality straight away here. It's all nice and smooth and angled. You can see all the shadows going along there. There's quite a big difference here when you obviously change the settings of your shadows here. So I usually leave that quite high. That's just my personal settings. Sometimes I run it on low or medium. Once again, it all depends on how I'm feeling and what I'm doing. Another thing, I'm going to just drop that back down to medium. Another thing is the light volume quality. Once again, up to you and how well it obviously volumes out and fills an area. I just leave that on medium. And the last thing is your SAO quality. I leave it disabled. You can leave it on high or ultra. It's up to you, but you'll notice how our FPS is going to take quite a big hit now. So we're on what, 70, 80 here now. It does fluctuate, and personally, I don't see that much of a difference. You can kind of see here your occlusion that's going around it, and it looks quite nice. If we were to go and disable that, so let's just go and disable, you can see straight away you don't get that occlusion, so it all just looks like white, dunk white, whereas before we had that nice lovely shading and so on and so forth. So it's up to you if you want to run that. As I said, it does give you some FPS sometimes, it doesn't, it's up to you. Wildlife is something that I actually have disabled. I never usually have wildlife in my game. I just find it's something extra that I need to do, and I almost never ever see any wildlife, to be honest. You know, you can see some wildlife down there now, and if you're doing some like particular roleplay missions and things like that, it is quite cool to have the wildlife, but once again, it's up to you. I usually have it disabled. Vehicle foam is something I do have enabled, so you can see here the vehicle foam just around the creation. You can obviously disable that if you do want. We're going to watch the FPS, it's more or less the same, and you get rid of the foam. For me, it doesn't really give you that much FPS. I like to put it back on. You also have ocean foam. Ocean foam is the actual foam on the ocean here, so when you have high waves, so if we go and turn up the wind a bit here, you'll notice the waves are starting to move. Let's give it a few seconds, but there is no foam on it. You can go and enable that, then you get your ocean foam like that. So once again, that's not too taxing. It's once again up to you if you want that. I like it, so I leave it on. Let's just go and get rid of the wind here. Cool. Another setting that we have is ocean reflections. Now, I have it on. You can turn it off. To be honest, it's up to you. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't really do anything. Yeah, it doesn't really do anything for me. But once again, it's up to you. In terms of FPS, you can see we're now, what, 95, 100, so on and so forth. If we were to go and turn the ocean reflections back on, we've dropped about 5 to 10 FPS there. So you can gain a little bit more FPS by turning that off and on. But it's once again, it's up to you. It's nothing dramatic. It's not going to give you like a 50% improvement on your FPS. Once again, that is completely up to you. Ocean plants, I have it disabled. Once again, I hardly ever do any submarine missions and things like that that would require me to really like to have the ocean plants. But as I said, it's up to you. You can't even see any here. It's only once you start getting a little bit deeper there. But once again, that's up to you if you want to have that enabled, disabled. Tree quality, for me, medium is fine. Trees look fine to me. You know, you can upgrade that to high, but for me, there is no difference here. It's all about the same FPS. Gain a little bit here and there. you can kind of see straight away how we've lost all the detailing on those trees. And then if we go back to medium, we've gained some more. We're dropping a little bit of FPS here and there. And you can kind of see by that graph in the top left hand side of the screen now that's pretty much the highest that FPS has been so far. Obviously, if we look at the ship, our FPS is going to drop quite a bit. But yeah, and then the last is the monitor quality. I like my monitor quality to be quite high. Once again, this is completely up to you. I'm actually just going to go and get rid of this creation. We'll load in one of my creations that have a camera on it so we can actually show you what that looks like. Let's just go back to the workbench here, and we're just going to get let's get the twin otter. I know that's got some cameras on it, and that will make it look quite nice. So we can just go and load up the twin otter. There we go. Spawn that in, and let's have a look at the monitor quality. So currently mine is on I think high, so we'll have a look at it and we'll see what difference it makes. So avionics, and let's go to the screen here. So you can see here that what we have. I'm going to turn the engines on, why not? You can kind of see the difference here. It looks really good. It's really nice. It's actually not only 32 pixels. It's quite nice in terms of the quality. We can go and change that. Now this does actually tax your FPS. So I'm on 70 FPS right now. Let's go and change our monitor quality to low. Okay, so straight away we've not really gained any FPS. I think physics we've probably gained a little bit, but not much. But you can see the quality of the monitor now is terrible. For me, I can't see anything. So I usually like to leave it on high, but you can see medium also. So let's just put it on medium there. That's not bad. It's not bad at all. You can obviously still make out, and especially on a 1x1 screen, it's fine. But if you're looking at your bigger screens, let's go and put on a high quality here. I'm just keeping an eye on my physics and so on and so forth. That all looks fine. Yeah, but it makes a big difference, obviously, switching your monitor quality to a higher setting. But as I said, you can lower that if you want to get a little better performance. But for me, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. The major taxing thing, as we always know, is when you load your bigger creations here in Stormworks, then you really start getting hit, and that's when you can really start lowering some of these quality settings. But yeah, those are pretty much my settings. As I said, sometimes I mess with a few of them, and this is not going to be my settings forever. Obviously, these are the settings that I use as the game is right now, which is an early access. Obviously, we are getting version 1 quite soon, so things might change, quality might change, graphics might need to be changed. I don't know. So this is what I use. I find it works the best for me. I get the most FPS out of it. It's completely up to you on what you use. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this little video, obviously with all the specs and also what settings I use here in game, and a little bit more of a background into how I do what I do. But if you guys would like to maybe see a setup video on my channel where I can show you my actual setup, my computer and my monitor and so on and so forth, just comment below. Let me know if you would like to see that. Maybe we can do that sometime soon on the channel. But as always, if you have enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And of course, always let me know your comments in the video description below. What you like, what don't you like, what you want to see in the next video. And always, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it entertaining and informative as always. And we'll see you in the next one.